Hi, this is Trev and welcome to my blog. This is part 2 of my Bedford CA van restoration. The first job I'm going to do is to remove the wings, the front panel and the bonnet so that I can gain access to remove the original engine and gearbox. As you can see, there's not a great deal holding this on, so it shouldn't take long to get it off. Let's see. Yeah, well, that took like about, 5 minutes. There's only about 3 bolts on it as we can see. Have a look at it. What I'll do is I'm going to split the wings off that front panel now, and I'll store it in the back of the van so that it doesn't get any more damage than it already is, because I'm probably going to have to try and rescue all this lot. It's looking more and more basic now the more I look at this car. Interesting. I think the engine will probably take a bit more than 5 minutes to get out though. I can't believe how well this has lasted, considering it's 1960. I mean, these parts are pretty rust free really. I've just noticed as well, I took the bonnet off because it had all been undersealed from new. I've seen they've sort of taken care to underseal the underside of all the panels as well. You know, even the bonnet has got a real thick coat of this underseal stuff on, which has obviously preserved it quite well. With the engine removed now, we can see what we're dealing with. This is what it looks like with the engine out. Obviously I've still got the exhaust to remove and the gear linkages and bits of wiring and a few other odds and sods, but this is pretty much what it looks like. Something that's really become apparent to me whilst taking the engine out is how far the engine was mounted towards the left hand side of the vehicle. We can see these chassis outriggers where the original engine mountings would have mounted to, how far this one is over that chassis rail compared to the right hand side, the driver's side, how much longer it is to the chassis rail, which is right up in there, and there's this huge outrigger going up to the engine mounting, whereas this one's over the other side. This was in order to give the driver some floor space so that they could mount the pedal box in there and actually give the driver some foot space. If we look at the passenger side, you can see how much more narrow that is. Now, I've done some preliminary measurements. The total lengths of the engine and gearbox. Now the Bedford is 1,150 millimeters. This is from the front pulley face to the exit spline on the gearbox, and the Ford the same I measured is 1,270 millimeters. This gives us a difference of 120 millimeters, which not too bad. I've got the engine side by side. As I said, this is an 1800 zetec engine from a Ford Focus, mounted to a Ford Type 9 5-speed gearbox. And we have the Bedford. Both engines are pretty much 500 millimeters in length each, so really it's the gearbox that's giving it the extra length. Going back to the original Bedford engine, I've got this piece of threaded bar, we'll call this a straight edge. If I hold it across the engine mountings at the front, it lines up perfectly with the front pulley. So logic tells me that if I put a piece of box section as a straight edge, very thin, across the front of between the outriggers, rested up against the outriggers like that, it gives us a good indication where to mount the front pulley for the zetec engine, because obviously we've got to squeeze the radiator in yet as well. It gives me a good indication how far forward the engine can come. Now this is the original Bedford measurement on my crude but effective piece of battening with the measurements on there. This is the original Bedford measurement, and if we hold it underneath we can see where the original engine would have gone, where it would have sat in that hole. And the difficulty I've got now is the Type 9 gearbox has got the gear lever mounted right on the very end of the gearbox, so therefore I'm going to have to remove all the way up to this cross member. So we go back to our straight edge, go back to our measurement. If I hold it on there, that's in line with the outriggers. Gives us a good indication where the engine can go. Obviously this is just a rough idea at the moment, not to the millimetre, but it gives us a very good idea. So let's go back inside. So I'm going to remove the floor all the way back to this cross member. I don't want to touch this cross member because obviously it's a structural part of the shell. I want to try and retain as much of the strength as I possibly can, but I'm going to have to remove this piece of floor. So what I'll do next is I'll remove the exhaust and any of the original bits and pieces I don't need anymore, and cut the floor out as well. Anything that's going to be in the way is going to get out of the way. and then well, we'll see what happens. So we'll catch you in part 3. Facing more problems head on. Somebody said, actually, I listened to a brilliant chap the other day, and he said problems are a sign of life, but the problems that you deal with, you have to confront a problem, and not in an aggressive way. Confrontation, not in an aggressive way. You've just got to confront a problem. When you confront a problem, you overwhelm the problem, and the problem is sorted, and you can then move on. The problem only remains a problem when there's a balance, you see, because there's a balance between you wanting something to be different and somebody else wanting something to be different. So there's an equal balance there. When one side is overwhelmed, the balance is lost and the problem is solved. Either you give in or you win the problem, but not in an aggressive way. And another interesting thing he said was that if a problem isn't solved, that problem then becomes a solution to a problem, because an unresolved problem is only unresolved because of a greater problem that exists, so it actually becomes the solution. We should call this Zen and the art of CA restoration or something like that.